Thank you for joining us. I'm Hannah Finneran. I'm a CBT therapist and I'm also a coach and the owner here at Gracie Bar Warrington. I really wanted to provide a video for our members but also for the wider community as well of some CBT fundamental tips that I use every single day with my clients, but I also wanted to share with you during this really stressful time. We are in the second week of a lockdown here of Covid19 in the UK. So of course we're all struggling more than normal, be that with mood, with that anxiety, with stress. So I really hoped to provide some really helpful tips on how to manage and how to get support. I hope you enjoy this video. Please follow my Instagram account, which is Hannah Finneran _CBT. Post daily on there with some more helpful tips and skills. I hope you enjoy. We're in the second week of Covid-19 lockdown, but actually only day 4 of the kind of serious lockdown measures that are in place, and already starting to notice kind of a lot of people struggling, not just in my professional work but in kind of a social capacity as well. So I've been spending quite a lot of time obviously adjusting my work as a therapist to people who can't get outside, people who are socially isolated, just like we're doing the Gracie Bar online. In my work as a therapist, everything's gone online as well. So really lots of things are changing and everyone's struggling, and that isn't to say that that doesn't include myself and Graham, but it just felt really appropriate just to try to go through some really fundamentals of CBT and what we would try to do. And obviously a lot of things that we can't do, our normal routine and our normal ways of coping don't apply right now. So it felt appropriate to try and give everyone some support with what we can do and what we can't do. So I'm hoping in the next kind of 20 minutes to go through 3 areas. The first one being about mood. So of course this is all impacting our mood and our stress levels, so that's going to be really important. Doesn't mean that you're suffering from depression, you may be. And if you are, like some of the clients that I work with, you'll know that now it's harder than ever because all the things you would normally do aren't available. So that's going to be the first thing that we cover. And again, just really an introduction to hopefully some really tangible things that we can do. The second area is going to be around anxiety, worry, what we can do, uncertainty, and then a bit of a conclusion really on the third point that I want to get to, in terms of what's available to us, how can we support each other. Also in terms of children, I know we've got obviously parents here that might be too young, the kids might be too young to have the conversation with, but also I'm thinking from our point of view with Ben, but also our students that have here in the Future Champions, the Tiny Champions, and the parents, what we can do for them to try and provide a bit more structure and support. So first of all, going back to mood. So in CBT, we tend to work off of the acronym ACE, so ACE. And that's really, if we were treating someone for low mood or stress, that would be the first thing that you would pretty much get to be talking about right from the beginning. So even if you're really, really low, that would be the first protocol. And ACE is first of all achievement, the C is for connection, and the E is for enjoyment. Now, of course, when you're depressed or when you're feeling low or when we're feeling stressed or frustrated, those 3 things might seem obvious that we need, but they tend to be the last thing that we actually come to, often because that's things for ourselves, often because we, in that tiny bit of capacity that we do feel like we have, it tends to be for things like work or things for other people. So particularly at the moment, we want to be looking at, particularly in lockdown, what can we do to get a sense of achievement every single day? For a lot of us, that usually is work, and at the moment, we've seen on, for a lot of my clients, but also on our group chats and for students, a lot of people are unemployed at the moment, or are really worried about the uncertainty of what their job has. So trying to find a sense of achievement, I know it's been going around on social media, picking up hobbies, but actually there's a real scientific basis in that a sense of achievement boosts our endorphins, boosts our neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. I won't try and get too technical, but serotonin and dopamine, I'm sure most of us know, are our happy hormones. They're ones, if you're on antidepressants, that they're trying to push up. and achievement does that same thing. And that, sometimes we might have to look at changing that baseline of achievement, because we're not maybe doing a million and one things in the day that we'd normally be doing. We're not going to the gym, we're not going to work, maybe some of us. So looking at what you can get a sense of achievement from. So that might be, in terms of, I know for me it's around cleaning, it's around kind of studying, reading. For some of you it might be looking at kind of new things that you can do. So Graham last night got the saxophone back out. He's not been on the saxophone for 27 years. So it might sound like cliche things, but trying to find something that's really going to create interest in your brain. And what we know from kind of CBT is when people are low, interest switch off. We haven't got the capacity, like we just said, we haven't got the capacity for that extra overload. So we tend to shut that off. But that's actually what we need most, is that interest. So it might be, how many times have we said, oh, if only I had time. At the moment, that's exactly what we have got. We have got time, so trying to find things that are going to boost your sense of achievement will be great. Connection, so that's C, coming back to that. Of course, connection usually would be in the sense of seeing people, socialising. But in real severe depression, that isn't the case. It's not the first thing that we say to people, oh, just go and see your friends. You can build connection in so many different ways. And I know we're really fortunate to have things like social media, and we'll come on to how that can be also a bit of a downside sometimes. But having that sense of achievement is really important, and that sense of connection. And that might not usually be through text message or like we're doing now in terms of video chat. So yes, a connection in terms of other people as well, but also it might be old friends, it might be family members, but also it might be in terms of other things like connecting to if it's spiritual for you, or if it's in terms of nature, things like that. And then E, so E being enjoyment. So looking for things that we enjoy. If we're struggling because normally they are things that we do outside or things that we can't do anymore, it's looking at what our other options are and trying to kind of broaden that repertoire. So again, like we said, it might be things like learning new skills, it might be kind of trying to boost interest, but it might just be things, like in the home, things like games, puzzles, stuff like that, stuff that normally we wouldn't be doing, but actually, again, they're the things that boost those chemical drives in our brain that are going to lift our mood. Of course, like we're doing today, we're going to be doing a HIIT workout after here. We all know that exercise is good for us. We all know that it's something that boosts endorphins, but often it can be really hard to go from little exercise or something like jiu-jitsu where it's set times, you're in a routine, it's with other people, and it kind of takes it from there. It's very hard if you're someone who always attended class-based exercise to then go to trying to find the motivation to start your own home workouts. I know I've seen actually lots of people setting up weights and stuff like that in the gardens or in their own little home gyms. But a really ironic thing that we find in CBT is that people tend to wait for the motivation before they do something that's going to make them feel better. And actually what is the hardest point really in CBT is that action needs to come first. If we're well and if we're on a good day, we might feel motivated, we go to the gym. But on the hard days, we don't feel motivated, then we don't do anything, or we don't do the home workout, or we skip the class, or we skip whatever it is that we're doing. Then we feel worse, and then it's harder the next time. And you can imagine how usually people get locked in that kind of downward spiral. So really it's trying to build a structure, and we'll come back to kind of routine, but things like the classes online that we're doing, or I've seen lots of yoga and lots of other fitness people and other gyms that are putting on classes online for their students and for their members, trying to tap into what is happening and when, and trying to keep that routine. Even though we're recognising we're all trying to adapt, and none of this is ideal, it's a big part that we're going to keep coming back to today, is looking at what we can control and looking what we can take charge of, and looking what we can put in place when there's so much around us that we can't control. We don't know how long this is going to last, we don't know if tomorrow there's going to be another announcement, we don't know if it's going to be lifted next week. No one knows, and that's a breeding ground for anxiety, which we'll come on to now. So in terms of anxiety, worry is bred from uncertainty. Because what happens is when uncertain things start happening, whether it's financially, whether it's your business, whether you're self-employed, whether it's when the children are going to go back to school, whether it's your kids' exams, there's a part in our brain that when things are uncertain, our brain tells us to make them more certain, which is logical, of course it is. There's uncertainty, let's make them more certain. Our brain actually does that by worrying, by overthinking. And even though that might seem, I'm thinking things through, I'm trying to find answers, actually when we're doing that for too long, it becomes a negative spiral again. And actually what we tend to do is just cause more anxiety, and I'm sure we're all aware, the more anxious we get, the less logical we're thinking, the less likely we are able to solve our problems. Then we get more anxious because we're not finding a solution, there's more uncertainty, there's more worry, and again we get locked into that cycle. So a really important couple of things to try and break out of that cycle is, one, normalising. I'm not sat here saying I'm not finding this difficult and we're not finding this difficult. Of course, it's a really stressful time for everyone, but it's recognising that this is happening to the whole world, and that it is something that we have to acknowledge is really anxiety-provoking and is really, really stressful.
Like we're not on our own.
No, we're not on our own. And even though that might seem, we could do that in a really self-critical way, like, oh, I'm not on my own, I'm sure there's loads of other people worrying. It's not about minimising how stressful this is. It's about recognising that, of course it's stressful. My normal part of my brain is kicking in now, because a lot of you probably already heard about fight or flight, and it won't be something we'll go into detail today. Hopefully maybe if we do this again in future. But that part of our brain that goes, there's a threat, flood my body with ways of coping, is fight or flight, and we can often get really caught up in that. Now, of course, normally, when we're feeling anxious, when there's, a deadline coming, or there's an exam coming, or a bill coming, or a discussion that we have to have, there's a beginning and an end point. So imagine, like, I always say to my clients, imagine anxiety like your smoke alarm in your house. Now that smoke alarm is there to protect you. It's completely adaptive, just like anxiety. It's there to provide signals to our brain that we are in trouble, just like our smoke alarm at home. But just like our smoke alarm at home, sometimes it goes off for toast. And that's exactly what anxiety does. So when people with anxiety disorders struggle, that's because their triggers in their brain are going off to, this trigger happy. They're getting flooded with all this anxiety when it's not necessary. So they learn to fear things they don't need to fear. Emails, conversations, the phone going, work, going to the supermarket, all these things that people with anxiety really suffer with. But again, there's a beginning and an end point. Where that's different with this coronavirus is we don't know a beginning and an end point. It's all that uncertainty. So whereas we can't press the reset button like we would do in normal anxiety methods. So what we want to be doing is normalising, like we've said, thinking about what we can change and what we can't change. So when we're thinking about worry, what we want to do is try and separate the two. So there's two parts in anxiety, just to give us a brief overview. There's hypothetical and then there's real. Now the hypothetical is, what if this never ends? Now that is a hypothetical worry because we've not got any answers, it's not happening right now. So that's something we want to try and shift our attention. And shifting our attention is really, really hard, and it takes a lot of practice. But what we've essentially got to say is, can I do anything about this right now? Is it in my control? Is it my responsibility? And is it possible? Now, hypothetical worry like, when is this all going to end, is not in your control. There may be elements of your responsibility, but it's not all your responsibility. And it's not happening right now, because they're not saying, we've got no idea, this is going to go on forever. Then it'd be different. So in terms of hypothetical, that's why we want to shift our attention, we want to focus on the things that we can control, and make adjustments in our lives to try and support us best through ACE, like we've just said. Now, the other side of it is the real. So the real is, I have been laid off. The real is, our business has had to close. The real is, that person has cancelled. The real is, I can't afford that bill. The real is, the kids are at home. So they're things that are happening right now. So we want to try and separate those, because the real are things that we can problem solve. Even though anxiety likes to tell us all that we're not good problem solvers, actually when we're able to separate the two and find through all of the chaos, we can then pinpoint what is the problem and what do I need to do. So if it's okay, there's a lot of government advice out there at the moment for people who are being unemployed. Obviously today they're going to look at the self-employed. So it's trying to kind of shift from all of the advice that's going on out there, all of the social media posts, all of the friends that are messaging you saying, have you tried this link, and have you tried that link, and have you looked at that, and actually just trying to narrow down to the 3 things you feel able to do about it. So that might be, speaking to your council, that might be speaking to your boss, that might be, trying to kind of get off your own back a little bit in terms of the homeschooling and just try and set one academic thing that they're going to be doing. But looking at tangible solutions, the more we do that, the more confidence we will build in our ability to problem solve, and then the less and less the anxiety gets. Whereas with the hypothetical, when we get caught up in that and we can't find a solution because they're not in our control, in our responsibility, and in our and it's happening right now. Anxiety tells us that there is no solution, that we can't cope, that we've got no way out, breeds more anxiety. So it's really important just to summarise on that anxiety point, to try and distinguish the 2, the hypothetical and the real. Trying to look at what is in your power and what isn't. Trying to take control of the things that you can, like we said, through problem solving steps, and trying to let go and give yourself permission that actually, even though it's completely understandable that it's going through my head and it's really stressful, is it in my control? Is it in my responsibility? Is it happening right now? And they're 3 really important questions that we need to ask ourselves when worry kicks in. In terms of kind of the 3rd thing, so tangible things that we can do, not only for ourselves but for our children, is the cliche, which is talk about it. When I said that I was looking into some research, I was actually looking into some research into brain scans. And in anxiety, when we're looking at brain scans, there's a part of our brain, which again is that smoke alarm, we'll just call it that for now. That smoke alarm in our brain, that smoke alarm in brain scans is actually reduced when we name emotions. So when we're just feeling all of this, but we're not talking about it and we're not naming it and we're not recognising it, that anxiety just goes up and up. Whereas actually brain scans show that there is less activity in that area, that smoke alarm area of our brain, when we name it. So for children, that's really important. Graham calls it, when the kids get into competition, that Superman juice. All of those anxiety symptoms, all of those things that are flooding our body, it's really important that we name it for our children, but also name it for ourselves. And I know in terms of mental health, there's been a lot, particularly this year, about it's okay not to be okay, and that's great, and that that is certainly something that helps us first step out there. But particularly to the people that you do trust and that you do, whether it's you writing it down or whether it's you speaking to somebody, acknowledge actually how you're feeling. So acknowledging that emotion. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm angry at the world. I'm angry at my employer. Even though it can be really hard to then what we do about it, and hopefully some of those other things we've just said will help. But naming the emotion initially for ourselves and for our children reduces the anxiety. We're putting a label to it, and then we can get it out and we can normalise it. Secondly, looking at changing the things that we can. Having a time to reflect what's working and what's not working. For a lot of you, including myself, you're going to have elements of working from home. And even though initially that's great, I'm getting out of that really, really busy office. For those of you who already work at home, you probably know that there can be a huge merge in your day. There's no set beginning and end time. There's no set break time. There's no set routine. So trying to provide yourself with those boundaries, whether that's to your employer, whether that's to your customers, whether that's to your clients, of having a beginning and an end time, and trying as much as you can to adapt and provide yourself with a structure still. So normally if we were working our normal day, we'd get up, we get a shower, we have breakfast, we commute. Even though that commute might be really stressful, you're still getting half an hour to an hour in the car with your own thoughts. Some might be harder commutes than others. You're getting that time before you get into work, and you're getting that time on the way back. Those 2 times at the beginning and end of our day, even though they might be stressful with commuting, is a time for reflection. What am I doing today? What do I need to be doing? So trying to get up and list, creating a to-do list of what it is that you need to be doing that day and what it is that you're focusing on, and making sure that that's realistic. Just because you are working from home and you could be on your laptop till 9 PM and you could get all of this done, should you? Is it necessary? Is that going to help you longer term? For those of you who maybe aren't working or are in isolation and don't have the luxury of working from home, the same applies. trying to provide yourself with a structure. Even if you're not going out of the house, which for a lot of us, you might not maybe be getting out until later on where you're doing your exercise, still getting up and getting dressed. Even though it sounds it sounds really common sense, we all know what we can be like on the weekends, not getting, maybe just, staying kind of in stuff to lounge around in until later on when we've got to get ready. But again, it's signalling to our brain we're ready for the day, and likewise at the end of the day. Another thing in terms of routine, particularly at the end of the day, is sleep. Now, sleep's really important for managing anxiety because it's a huge part in our resilience, but also in managing mood. We all know what we're like when we're sleep deprived. I'm sure parents can identify more than ever. If we're sleep deprived, everything seems worse, everything seems harder. So even if you're not maybe got something to get up for, or you haven't got, maybe it is the weekend, or maybe you're isolating, trying to set a sleep pattern, the same, going to bed and waking up time. It sounds really common sense, but things like that, again, is signalling to our brain we're in a routine. And that's really important for structure, and it's really important for resilience, and it's really important because it's something that we can control. The final thing that I'm going to mention in terms of routine is food. Now, particularly kind of my background, CBT, lies a lot in eating disorders, and that isn't saying that you have to only have an eating disorder to benefit from regular eating. But again, we can all empathise with the feeling of hungry and what it's like when we're not eating enough, or eating is chaotic, or we're not eating convenience foods, and that can be a huge thing for stress as well. What is going to be available, and we may have to be flexible around that, but trying to still have regular eating, so breakfast, lunch and dinner. Not getting up and not having anything because you've got straight on the laptop, or not wanting to kind of cook lunch or make a lunch and everything just merging into one. Trying to provide yourself with clear signals throughout the day. So just to kind of recap there, it's controlling things that we can, providing yourself with a routine, not just in terms of your work, beginning and end time, but in terms of sleep, in terms of boundaries with colleagues and time for yourself, and in terms of a daily routine with regards to food. Obviously, if you're in isolation, or if you're already self-isolating, that's going to be harder. So you may need to rely on other people to kind of communicate around your groceries and things like that. But again, that's coming back to that first thing that we said about, it's a connection. Hopefully, if you've not already identified someone that is your that is your social support, particularly kind of our members, or if anyone's kind of listening to this on YouTube, reaching out to members of your family or friends, or us, obviously here at Grace Bar Warrington, we've already said, if you can't do those things for you, then we will help. But it's really important that we all are able to identify people in our lives that can help us with that, because if the structure starts to crumble, that's when worry and more time to think starts to creep in, and again that downward spiral that we mentioned at the start. So I know that was a whistle-stop tour really through some of the things that I found helpful, certainly in just this 1 week of clients, and we're not really talking about much else other than what's going on, to be honest. So I've had a lot of time to think about what could be helpful. Of course, if you are struggling, there are obviously lots of memes out there. I know that probably GPs are inundated, but things like the Samaritans, things like Mind, things like Anxiety UK, but also even if you're not maybe suffering that much, but this is something you think, actually, I need to know a bit more of this. We will do more talks, not just on this, but jiu-jitsu and other topics each week, just to kind of keep everyone's interest, because we know how important that is from the start of this conversation. If there's anything that you're wanting to know, or anything that you'd be interested in knowing a bit more about, then just drop us an email, or on the WhatsApp, or leave a comment on here, and we can look at it for future videos. In terms of what we've covered, I'll put a bit of a summary on our Facebook group anyway, so that anyone who didn't catch this can look at it. But hopefully there were some tangible things to work through. I know that we covered a lot very, very quickly, but I wanted to get a kind of introduction to all of it, and then in future we can kind of go a bit deeper into them. So I hope that's helpful. Thanks very much for joining. So in mind of ACE, like we said at the beginning, achievement, connection and enjoyment, we're going to do our drop zone HIIT workout now, so hopefully you can all connect with us, get a sense of achievement and enjoy that with us now. Thanks guys.
Awesome guys.